Welcome to HealthTech Growth, the weekly podcast for healthcare founders and innovators, where we explore essential strategies to create successful and sustainable healthcare startups that improve patient outcomes and transform the healthcare industry.
We often hear that funding has been getting harder and harder. Is that true, or is that actually just most people haven't got to how do you build trust? Show people that you really have a great, amazing solution, not just this great visionary idea, but you have something that you can back up, both from traction's perspective and the people that surround yourself to truly make something happen. And we see that it's really just a false belief. So we wanted to break down some of the misconceptions and challenges in the field, especially for all of those who are women-led. And thanks, Claire, for joining us today. And we can't wait to have this amazing conversation on some of the misconceptions when it comes to funding, especially related to women-led founders.
Thanks, Sabrina, for having me. I'm really looking forward to a great discussion today.
So tell us a little bit more about your personal experience in the field in terms of the type of portfolio you guys have already worked with. What are some struggles when it comes to getting funding in the current landscape?
That's a great question. And I think, since kind of the high point in 2021, we've seen it become much more difficult for founders to kind of live to see another day, to get that next round of capital, especially for founders who raised in the sort of really heady days in 2020 and 2021, that it's become much more of a challenge now. Just to kind of take a step back, we're a fund that invests in early stage healthcare. So early stage for us is seed and Series A. So we're typically seeing companies when they have a product, a little bit of signs of product market fit, some revenue coming in, but they're kind of looking to scale and kind of prove out that they do actually have product market fit. And I think early stage innovation hasn't dampened. There's still tons of absolutely exceptional founders that are out there. There's still, obviously, we all know, tons and tons of unmet need within healthcare, tons of places where you can really make an impact on the patient experience, on physician burnout, on a lot of these really big problems that need to be tackled. So I think the market opportunity is there. I think it's just that the power has shifted a little bit where venture investors can all of a sudden ask to see a little bit more. We don't kind of have this FOMO dynamic that really existed, especially in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, I think it's about the true alignment. It's not to feel like there is not enough, right, opportunity to invest in. There are plenty, and I think the mindset need to go both ways. From the founders, figure out where you fit the best, which venture firm, and then the ventures that want to get to know you a little bit more, right? And what I hear sometimes, which is like stabbing my heart, is when I ask them, okay, so how much are you raising? What are you using it for? And it's very generalized, like, oh, I need a payroll, but no, yeah, I need a lot more in my platform. So then I would have to chase them for the next thing. But how? Like, in what way, right? Like, give us a better, clear picture on what's the strategy to even do that? Like, how is that competitive? So what did you see as a commonly seeing that lose interest in some of the conversation that you had?
Oh, definitely. That's a great point because I think, when capital markets are really tight and when fundraising is really difficult, capital efficiency and, really being laser focused on what do I need to do to prove out my company to get that next milestone becomes so much more important. You have to think about your business from the nice to haves versus the needs to have perspectives. What is the milestone that, if I'm a seed stage company, how do I get to that place where a Series A investor will think this is a really attractive company? Like, is that revenue growth? Is that, building out a product feature that will allow you to scale within your existing accounts? The answer is different for every company, obviously, depending on, who you're selling to. Like, is it B2B? Is it B2C? All the different dynamics, but, being laser focused on what is that investor going to want to see will really help you prove it out. And I think that turns into, really specific asks in terms of, well, I'm raising, X number of $1 million, and these are the 4 places it's going to go to, and having really good answers for, why you need that quantum of capital.
Yeah, and then I think some founders are smart enough to say, "Hey, I needed to have my own company do a whole round of due diligence, so I understand perhaps what I even value myself at, and then how much money I needed to ask, and talk to my CFOs and have some kind of contingency." Because otherwise, it seems like people always saying, "Oh, do I need to bootstrap more? Do I need to refinance my house even to do this?" Versus,
Mhm.
"Oh, I have some kind of runway until the capital is here," right? And do you also feel like sometimes people are not really clear in their projection of when they need a funding or money? So sometimes they're raising too late, and then they're like, "Oh, I thought I can just raise 2 million on top of what I already had, but why is so hard?"
Yeah, I think there's two dynamics at play here. The first is this sort of trap of the bridge to nowhere, where, maybe you took in $1 million a year ago and you're kind of starting to realize, like, hey, this isn't going to be enough to get me to that next value inflection point. So you put together a bridge round and you kind of just bring in what you can. Um, but from an venture investor perspective, like, we want to make sure that if we're investing in that, that's getting you to that value inflection point. And I think, that can be something that, you feel the pressure of, like, I've got to bring in capital or I have to close my doors. But, like, you have to make sure that capital is getting you to, not just to a place where you're going to have to bridge again, that it's really getting you to a value inflection point.
Right. It's having that clarity, right? Like if we think about like even just any type of basic human need is safety, security, and clarity. And if it goes both ways, if you have clarity that you can show the investors, then they are trusting you more, and that become a security point for them to give you the funding, and then understand that you can actually make things happen. Right, you have a clear pathway or clear resources that will actually hit the next mark, and they're willing to give you a bigger check once you get to that point, and not just that, oh, we seems to have some kind of plan, but but they can't really elaborate it concisely enough for us to build that trust for the next step to even happen.
Yeah, and that becomes kind of an issue in the ask sometimes. You'll have companies come in, and I know it's really difficult to figure out, how much money you need to kind of assess investor appetite. And, maybe in the early stages of your financing round or going out for your financing round, you're still trying to figure it out. But companies will sometimes come in and say, oh, well, we're looking for, 2 to $7 million. And the types of investors that will invest in a $2 million round are probably different than the investors who will invest in a $7 million round. So I think it becomes, just one of those easy reasons where it's, well, I don't know if they know what they need, what they want. Like, let's just pass on this till they figure it out. So I think having a really clear ask is one of the things that, as you're gearing up to get ready for going out and raising, whether that's a seed or an A or whatever your round is, really be clear about your ask. You can always kind of upsize the round if investor demand is there. You can kind of adjust it as if you're getting feedback from the market that your ask is unrealistic. But having that ask allows investors to say, yes, this is in scope for us. This would be a SpringTide deal, or this would be, insert your fund name deal. And I think that's an important part of the readiness process for a financing round.
Exactly. So when I look at the portfolio companies that has been successful for you guys to select, what are some of the key points besides being very clear on our ads that have helped them to stand out a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the weird realities of venture is that almost every pitch that comes in is something that you've probably heard before in some form or another, right? Like, technologies change and approaches change, but you've probably thought about the problem. Like, it's rare that someone comes in and pitches something where you're like, I've literally never heard of this before or never thought about it. And not because we're smart or omnipotent or any positive adjective. It's just like, there's a pretty known set of challenges within healthcare. So standing out becomes, who is your team? Are you, sort of an absolute cheetah is what we talk about. We're looking for cheetah CEOs. We're looking for people who can, surmount all of the challenges that you'll face in an early stage business, because it's exceptionally difficult to be successful. And I think it takes a really special type of person to kind of break out and to kind of have that runaway success. So we're looking at team. I think hand in hand with we've kind of understand the challenges here. Why is this approach going to be successful when others haven't been? I think there's a lot of, types of approaches to certain problems that have been tried before, but, what is your kind of unique angle and why will you be successful? And I think those are the two things that really stand out for early stage businesses.
Right. And people have to come in to say, like, it's not like you're unique. I think every time people talk about their product, they always immediately think they're unique. And then, but then the rest of us is like, well, but I kind of saw two other versions of this last week, right? So what is that specific thing that you made it easier, simpler, more cost effective, right? And it doesn't have to be completely mind blowing, but it has to have some kind of pivot point for people to care about. Either you have proving point that people really care about to adapt these solutions, or you actually made a whole system workflow, whatever is better and cheaper than your competitors. I think that's the part when we talk to a lot of founders is what's the SWOT analysis, what's the market competitiveness, how much do you actually know that market to put yourself in that spot. And sometimes the people haven't quite get to that point. Or when we ask the question, it seems like they will be, oh, that's on my pitch deck. Well, it shouldn't be just on your pitch deck. You should be able to tell me right away.
Completely. And I think, one of the things that's true across the board is it's really easy to have a bad healthcare experience in this country. And it's really easy for a smart, motivated person to take that experience and say, oh, well, I can fix this. Here is the product that I would design to fix this. And to kind of approach it from, yeah, I'm smart and motivated and I know technology, so I can go ahead and build this product. But I think the truly great founders are the people who kind of, ask those next level questions where it's like, well, why is this like this? Like, what is the root cause of this problem? And when you kind of dig deep and dig deep and dig deep and have that really strong understanding of the various dynamics in the healthcare system, the million different stakeholders that participate in every step of it, then I think you can get to a really interesting place and solve some interesting problems. So I think those founders that bring that knowledge to the table, that sort of earned experience, whether that's because they've spent their whole career in healthcare or whether that's because they were exceptionally motivated and really sought to understand the challenge. I think that can be differentiating because to your point, I'm just thinking reflecting about health, which is 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point, and you could walk the show floor and see multiple companies that are tackling the same problem. But there are companies that will be successful, and there are companies that are going to kind of fall by the wayside in those places. And I think understanding the market, understanding the incentives that are at play, like who is your customer, why are they paying for this, and how will the product directly benefit them? And if you can align those incentives, I think that gives you a leg up uh, on the various competitors within the space.
Yeah, so true. It's that you don't want to just walk down a showroom and then you sound like just someone else, right? Giving the same kind of passion story, but
Mhm.
nothing that can be, hey, pinpoint, tangible that make me want to capture, want to be excited to learn more, right? And when it come to you guys, I know every venture have their own little niche, and even the agnostic ones have some subset of interest. What are some of the interests you guys currently have?
Right. So we're healthcare specific, but I think we take a pretty broad aperture on health. I think, especially versus other funds in the space. So we say that we'll invest in anything that aligns with our mission of elevating health. Functionally, there are two big buckets of things that we do within that, and one sort of smaller one. The first is traditional health tech investing. So this is basically everything that you would see at a health. So digital health, care delivery, healthcare IT types of businesses. The next is deep tech within life sciences and healthcare, which can take a lot of different flavors as well. So these are tech bio companies, AI for drug discovery, life sciences tools, devices and diagnostics, kind of anything that has a deep technical co-founder that has the ability to protect via patent and can kind of build a moat that way. And those are things that are really interesting to us as well. And we'll also opportunistically invest in things that are aligned with our mission of elevating health, but maybe aren't you wouldn't look at it and say like that's definitely healthcare. So we have a company that makes safer smartphones for kids. At its core, it's a consumer cell phone business. But smartphones, the advent of social media, we know those have so many different behavioral health impacts. And there's really interesting things that you can do there in terms of helping, pediatric and adolescent behavioral health. So I think we take a pretty broad view on, what is it that we're trying to do in terms of, elevating the health of everyone around us.
Yeah, and this shows specifically, we also look into a little bit of close microscope on women-led funding, and then
Mhm.
we know it as the small bracket of what's available out there. The counterpoint always be, well, we don't have that many women-led companies, but the trend is continue to rise. So, what would you recommend for women-led founders that when it come to scaling their business and getting funding along the way?
Right. And it's one of the things that I think, I hope to see in the course of my career where we start to see a narrowing of the gap between the amount of funding that goes to men-led businesses versus the amount of funding that goes to women-led businesses. And I think there's tons of research about biases and the way that people ask questions of women founders and all these types of things that, I'm not an expert at, but are super interesting to read. And, I think every investor should at least take a look at and reflect a little bit on, well, how am I asking questions to women founders versus male founders? Is there a difference? Like just being aware of that is first and foremost, I think something that everyone in the venture industry can do. Um, but I think for women founders, I would encourage them to use their networks. I think that's been something that I've learned over the course of my career, and it sounds like a pretty simple thing, but we generally want to help each other out, people to people, woman to woman. And I think women tend to be a little bit less proactive in terms of asking for that help. We don't want to be seen as weak. Um, but there's tons of people, whether they're on the investor side, whether that's other founders, whether that's people in corporate environments who want to be helpful, who want to help people succeed. It's not a zero sum game. We can all succeed together. And I think that's the great part about venture capital. Even other funds, like we're not competitors, like we can all be successful and invest in great companies and hopefully bring innovation to the market. And I think, uh, you know, picking your head up and saying, someone's done this before, like, let me ask about this. That's just, I think, good advice for every founder. And I think women should be more proactive about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I just had my TED Talk and then officially on YouTube now, so I can call myself a TED
Woo,
speaker. So one of the three things.
congratulations.
Thank you. So one of the three things I talk about is exactly number one is that mental mode, right? Like the things that we were taught. Oh, we shouldn't have said that. We shouldn't be doing that. You're putting yourself out there. Who do you think you are? So that imposter syndrome, self doubt, actually holding us back. Versus there
Mhm.
are a lot of women are really great at driving, right? Great at putting themselves out there. But then it become decision overload, right? You have so many opportunities, so many advices. What do you do? Like, how do you take in everything, synthesize it to actually make the right choice? And then sometimes that holds us back. And then the last thing is if we don't feel like the system or the community is right for us, then build it, right? We have the ability to create and leverage the relationship and knowing these things take time to build and be okay with that, be okay to not rush to some kind of destination that's arbitrary, but actually creating the sustainable cohort, right? What I call that entire empower ecosystem, the right board members, the right investor relationship, the right communities, get them buying, get the continuing engagement, and don't forget about them once you make those relationships, to have more fun in the whole process of doing so. And that's one reason, as Claire and SpringTide also going to be a judge for our Impact Award coming up. And that's why we truly wanted to give back, right? Putting the right solutions on the map, giving them the features that they need, getting people to find you, know you, and learn how to create those community engagement. Because at the end of the day, raising funds, scaling your business is hard and it's not transactional. At the end of the day, we're all dealing with human and we're all dealing with the relationship that we build for the product that you're trying to disseminate to create the impact that you want. So keep that in mind when we're thinking about what business really means to you, right? And any last words, as we wanted to also share a little bit about your story as how did you end up to be in this spot? And then we definitely want to encourage more women go into becoming investors.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that's an absolutely fantastic point. If you don't see the community that you need, think about starting it. And I think this conversation and the work that you do is living proof of that, that we have to put ourselves out there and build the communities and build the spaces to have the types of conversations that we think will help people be successful. And, also to your point about mentorship, I think it's important to look at the next generation of young women who are coming up and thinking about their careers and thinking about starting companies, and what can we do to make that pathway, to pave that pathway a little bit for them, to give back to the community, to give back for all the people who've helped us, and make that a little bit easier or more straightforward at least.
Yeah, exactly. And then for you, we always seen the great things about women being leaders, women being in VCs, and then definitely encouraging more people to be in that place also helps the rest of the women leaders out there to continue to holding hands to create the best ways and then support each other and get the back. Go back to our initial point, be clear and be okay to ask for what you need. And we're all here to support you. You just have to start having conversations and give yourself grace for that.
hmm Right. And to kind of wrap my background into this, I studied biological engineering. I was in consulting in pharma and biotech for a few years, and then had a brief stint at a microbiome therapeutic startup as the chief of staff. And then I had kind of realized like venture looks really interesting. I had worked really closely with our investor when I was on the startup side. So I moved into a fund that was focused on food and agriculture biotech. And I think my second week within venture capital, I got connected to a local organization in Boston, which is now called Breaking 7%. It's national, I think, has chapters in multiple cities. And it's about women helping each other out, women in deal making roles, whether that's venture capital or business development, corporate dev. And that's just been such a rich source of, both friendship and personal connections, but also a lot of professional help as I've, been in venture now for almost 8 years. Um, Kind of getting the reps of learning how to ask people like, hey, I'm diligencing this. Can you connect me to an expert? What do you think about this space? Just kind of naturally building that cadence of asking for help and asking for assistance and giving it back to the community. So I think that's been really fun over the course of my venture career.
Wonderful. And I encourage everyone to connect with Claire when you have prepared yourself and have something that you really know how to ask and what to ask. And then don't be afraid to just start having more conversation with whether it is perhaps do your homework, people that already invested in versus some other areas that you have interest. And even for us, we're always here to help you in that due diligence process because we know it is a lot to put yourself out there to do all the resources and know what to say. How do you present yourself? And at the end of the day, be fun, right? Be creative, like enjoy the process. Otherwise, this big roller coaster is hard to push through. And we enjoy every moment of our conversation. And I encourage all of you guys to apply to our Impact Award. Go to postpointpass.com/awards. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to HealthTech Growth. If you're a healthcare tech innovator or founder interested in being a featured guest on our show, visit healthtechgrowth.io to learn more.